So in the last few days, former sports giant Skip Bayless, who was thought to have been on his way out or have already been out of his time as a sports giant, was recently seen or has went on a bunch of shows for Barstool Sports, who's currently really on their way to becoming the sports giant themselves. They have started out from basically from the ground up, and they have done a lot. Um, they've done a lot of really, really good things and have made a lot of noise, and they're the ones that people are starting to go to now for their sports talk content. An area that Skip Bayless had cornered for a long, long time. Now, Skip Bayless is somebody, I mean, you could talk for days about. He's been in the sports world for a long, long time, and his past there is quite colorful to say the very least. He's always been kind of a provocateur, I guess you could say, a contrarian, however you want to put it. He's never been afraid to put a controversial opinion out there, whether that was forced or whether that was from his heart, or whether it was from his heart and he just turned the volume up to 10, as they say with in the world of professional wrestling with their characters, when they say the best ones are really just a reflection of themselves with the volume turned up. To me, that's what it seems like Skip Bayless is. I don't know if he's really, but then again, maybe he is. I don't know, because one thing I've always admired about Skip is his hustle, as they say nowadays. He will put in the work, he'll put in the time, and he will do what it takes to make sure that he's out there, putting himself out there, and being the number one Skip Bayless marketer himself, which that has to be. You have to have the most confidence in yourself. If somebody has more confidence in you than you do, you're probably not going to do well. You can't have that self doubt. That's what's kept me from making videos for a long, long time. I know I'm not probably going to go all that far with these, but it's me, and I'm very proud of the videos that I've made so far. Me and my smartphone, just sitting here talking to them, talking to it, and anybody that likes tuning in, that's pretty awesome. But Skip's been a giant for a long time. Uh, he was working for a Dallas newspaper during the Dallas incredible dynasty of the early '90s, and the incredible falling apart that it took place in the later '90s when after Jimmy Johnson was forced out and Jerry Jones basically took over, and the spiral started that's continuing to this day of them just not being able to put together a good team. Very talented teams, but not being able to put together a good team. Um, this Sunday they just got massacred by the Detroit Lions. Now, the Detroit Lions are very good, but 47-9 loss at home. Yikes. But back to Skip. So I didn't really know anything about him until the early 2000s, because back then it was all about syndication and local columns, and I've never lived in Texas. Nothing but the utmost respect for the state, but just never lived there. Never lived anywhere that he's really been. So I didn't really know anything about him until I saw him on a show that was called Cold Pizza. Now, for those of you that weren't around then, this was in the early 2000s. I was in my late teens, early 20s. ESPN2 had a new morning show. I was in college at the time, I think, or I might have still even been in high school when it first started. It was a show called Cold Pizza. It was kind of like Sports Center, only it was just even more open and more freer, if that makes any sense. It was hosted by Jay Crawford and Dana Jacobs, two people that I have a lot of respect for. I like them. I think they do good. Do I agree with everything they've done and said? No, but I don't agree with everything I've done and said, even the last few days. So, I mean, that's how it goes. But I really, really respect them. And part of this, I mean, they would, like I said, it was like Sports Center, only just more open. They it's kind of like a mix between Sports Center and a talk show host, or a talk show TV show. And one of the segments they would have on there is this debate section between Skip Bayless and Woody Page. They would sit there and discuss sports topics of the day. And I actually found it pretty fascinating. I mean, like, again, do I agree with everything Skip said? No. But I respected it. I can't say I ever said, oh man, I can't stand that guy. All through the years, I can't say there's ever one time when I really said I can't stand that guy. I might have said, really? That's what you think? But at the end of the day, there's always a level of respect there. And as we got to know more and more about him, and I knew started to learn his history and the just wake of burnt bridges that he burnt along the way. athletes that he just pissed off and would continue to piss off on as his debate show, as the debate portion of that basically would take over the show. I mean, athletes would call in pissed off about it. Mark Cuban, billionaire, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, who I think were the defending champions at the time, called during the next year's finals to lambast Skip about something. And I'm like, wow, he's getting in these people's heads that bad? This is probably, so I guess this was about 2012. I mean, I was working on the ambulance. I was a paramedic. Still a paramedic, but I don't work in the ambulance. I work in a clinical environment, and I'm thinking, wow, this guy's in these people's heads? That's something to be said. Eventually, the show became called First Take, and I think the debate, if I'm not mistaken, the debate portion got called First and 10. They might have even had 10 topics, if I remember right. I don't really remember. I didn't. I clearly didn't research this part, as I don't really do a whole lot of research for these videos. It's kind of going off of memory. So it took over, and then eventually Stephen A. Smith joined Skip Bayless, which to me that was the height of the whole debate show thing. I've always loved, well, not always, because it kind of got hard to watch in the last few years, but pardon the interruption, with Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. I thought they had a great rapport. But it was also oftentimes a lot of the old guard, on there debating Skip and all that. And this was kind of the first time where one of the old guard, and very much an outsider of the old guard, but still he was of the old guard, going against one of the newer people at the time. It was the time Stephen A. Smith, I think, had just been fired. He had a very, very unique way of doing things. He's somebody that, from a entertainment standpoint, I don't really care for. He just seems to waffle back and forth. Sometimes he'll say things and I'm like, yeah, it's about time somebody says that. And then he'll, go back to beating the race card for 5 weeks at a time. And it's just kind of like, really? That's something I've never cared for. To me, you can't ever boil anything down to black and white. Well, very few things you can boil down to black and white, whether you're talking about skin color or elsewise. And that's where Skip Bayless comes in, because there's nothing black and white about him. There's a lot of shades of gray. Some very dark shades of gray, some very light shades of gray. And so there's a lot about him that I really admire. And on a personal level, like I said, I respect his work, his dedication, like I said, his hustle, as we call it now. I respect that a lot. Like I said, there's things from his past and even his present that I feel like he was kind of going out of his way to, be a provocateur. And to me, that kind of distracted from what I personally felt could have been better. But again, it's his deal, so again, I respect that. But he's like I said, just made a long list of enemies in the sports world along the way, and that would eventually come to kind of haunt him. Because no matter what, throughout the years, he adapted. He started off as a newspaper columnist, became a provocateur there, and worked his way into radio and syndicated radio shows, and I think he was on some syndicated television shows. I can't remember, but I know he found his way onto television in the debate style format that we now know and are absolutely sick of, because everybody has now kind of copied the formula of two people having differing opinions, going back and forth. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's ugly, sometimes it's just downright boring. And for a lot of these shows, it's kind of become that. But him and Stephen A., they had something special. They had a very good chemistry. They, quite honestly, in my opinion, it was kind of the height of both of their careers to this point. They just really had it. And to me, neither's really had it since they left. Because around, I don't know if it was 2015 or 2016, he left ESPN and decided to embark at Fox Sports 1. Started his own show called Undisputed, which was going to be his show, and then Shannon Sharp came available. He was kind of on the outs, kind of like Stephen A. was on the outs at the time. Now, they're two very talented sports personalities, TV personalities, and they were going to eventually find their way on their feet. But Skip kind of seemed to be the first one in each case to say, I want this person. And by all accounts, went to bat for them and got them on his show and did a lot of good things as far as, making noise and, making some decent ratings. Obviously, the ratings on FS1 were never what they were on ESPN, because people are just going to tune into ESPN before they turn into FS1. FS1 to me has the much better content for the most part. There's some people on there that I just could really care less about. Colin Cowherd's one. Never, I've just never gotten into him. Don't hate him, respect him. Again, respect his work, the work he puts in. But I can't say I've ever really agreed with much of anything he said. But that's just me. I mean, again, that's not trying to take a shot at him. That's just kind of giving my take on that. But the funny thing happened this time with FS1. I mean, he was doing good. Him and Shannon had good chemistry, it seemed like. The chemistry kind of dipped, just kind of really kind of fell out. And plus, we just all became bored to death of this whole debate style thing. Two people sitting back. You could tell sometimes it seemed contrived. This person had to have this opinion, this person had to have that opinion. And this goes back to a long, long time ago. I remember Joe Montana talking about right after he retired in the mid-90s, being on, I think it was NBC's NFL show, and he didn't like the fact that he was basically told to have, this viewpoint to go against this person's viewpoint to create that kind of, I guess, friction or whatever, conflict. That's what I'm looking for. It just didn't work, and quite honestly, it works a lot less than it does work. Skip was able to make it work for quite some time. He made it work with Shannon for a while, and then you could just tell they really were not on the same page, and quite honestly, I think on a personal level, they didn't really care for each other. Which is a little bit of a theme for Skip's career. He has a way of pissing athletes off, but I also kind of respect the fact that will not basically just give in to what they have to say because they've been there and done that. Because as he's come out and said, some of the best players, when they retire and they go into like a front office role, I guess Michael Jordan, my personal favorite athlete ever, is a prime example of that, because he owns my Hornets and it's not been good. Some of the best players have been some of the worst minds, and some of the best minds in all of being general managers and coaches were role players. Seems like they're the ones that and even bench players. Phil Jackson's the perfect example. He was a part of that amazing early 70s Knicks team. They won 2 championships, made it to a third finals where they were injured all to heck. They didn't win. But he, was not a superstar. He was a complimentary piece, not a starter. And, he just, and then he went to coach, and obviously having Michael Jordan and then Kobe Bryant and obviously Shaq and Scottie Pippen along the way and other people like that showed that, made it a little bit easier, but he showed that he could handle them. And that comes from probably sitting back and watching, Willis Reed, Walt Clyde Frazier, Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley, just all these amazing people that were on those Knicks teams. He probably watched them and saw how they handled their disputes and said, okay, and used that along with his own Zen Zen attitudes, meditations, Native American culture, rituals that he's incorporated big time, and a very good knowledge of X's and O's too. You got to give him credit for that. And Skip saw that, and he says, "I'm never going to defer to an athlete just because they've been there. Because as good as they might be, I mean, Shannon Sharpe, he's one of the best tight ends ever, and he." At the end of the day, he was not seeing the whole picture like some people were. He was focused on his role as being an unreplaceable piece of the Broncos team that won 2 straight Super Bowls and then won a third one with Baltimore. And they didn't have much of an offense, but he was there and he provided enough. Good Lord, he won a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer as his quarterback. What can you say? And he's gone on to do some really good things himself. But Skip, it seemed like he really, really, especially in the late 2010s into the 2020s, I don't even think politics had that much to do with it. Really, really fell behind. His stock fell down, and for the first time in his career, he really didn't adapt. Like I said, from the days of newspaper columnist to syndication, you can kind of see him going on and on. As things evolved, he evolved, but for once, he didn't evolve. He stayed stuck in the debate style format, which in all fairness he loves. He's been very open about loving that and preparing for these debates and going in there. And like I said, you got to admire his hustle, whether you agree with anything he says or not. Obviously, I don't disagree with everything he says. I don't agree with everything he says. So I'm one of the few people that's kind of right in the middle. I don't love him. I don't hate him. but I respect him. I really do. So it kind of came to a head when Damar Hamlin had his unfortunate cardiac arrest. Thank the good Lord he survived and is back out there playing now. They had to stop the game, the Bengals versus the Bills, late in the season, Monday night. His heart stopped after a hit straight to the heart, which knocked his rhythm out of line to where it wouldn't create a good heartbeat. And they had to do CPR and revive him, and it was a great comeback story. But at the time, I mean, a lot of us were pretty shook up by it. Um, and Skip made a tweet, and the tweet, I gotta say, I get his tweet. I get where he was coming from. The way he tried to frame it, was it the right timing for a tweet like that in that moment? No, I'll admit that. But I see where he's coming from. He's saying, he started talking about, the logistics, the stuff that, you're not, you got to wait at least 48 hours after somebody goes into cardiac arrest, and, they cart him off the field not knowing whether he's going to be pronounced dead at the hospital or have any kind of recovery or any kind of life afterwards. But he said, there's all this, playoff scheduling. It was late in the year. The Bills and the Bengals were, in the playoff hunt. Them, trying vying for that top seed over Kansas City, who would go on to win it all. Um, and he put out a tweet saying, all these things you got to think about now. Playoff scheduling, making up the game. And he ended it with, now it all seems so unimportant. So for me, I could kind of see where he was saying, look, there's all this stuff we have to worry about now, but it just feels very, very unimportant. And I get that. That's a very good tweet to make, in my opinion, 48 hours later. But I'll tell you what, though, to his credit, he did not delete the tweet. He did not back down. In a world where everything is, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize for this that I said 15 years ago when I was 20 years old or whatever. You hear all these people now that dig back emails from, 10, 15 years ago, and people have to apologize for it. He refused to apologize. And you could really see that Shannon was not happy about that. And his own stock was really on the rise at the time. Excuse me, while Skip's was on the decline because, again, for once in his career, he was not adapting. A few years pass, Shannon leaves, they try some new format with two people I really like, Paul Pierce and Keyshawn Johnson. They also had Richard Sherman on there. Not a big fan of his as far as the way he presents himself on television, but, again, there's respect there. Paul Pierce and Keyshawn Johnson, I actually like them. I actually like listening to them. They're cool. But it didn't work. It was just a mismatch of mismatches. And it was one of these, went from being the debate style to the new overused format where you put four guys on there that are all over the place. And they try to make a coherent show out of it, and it rarely ever works. And this might have been possibly the worst offender just because of the people involved. And so he eventually was kind of unceremoniously released from FS1. He's in his 70s. They said, "Yeah, we don't want you back." They allowed him to at least, finish out his time. He didn't make a big deal out of it. I don't think he wanted to make a big deal out of it. But all the headlines surrounding it said, "Well, this is the end of Skip Bayless's media career. He's done. He's done. He's done." And I said, I don't think he's going to just go away. I don't think he's going to say, "Yep, I'm done. Let me just go retire." That's just not his style. Skip, I think, is going to be out there talking about it in one way or another, whether anybody will listen or not, whether it comes down to making videos like the ones I'm making or not. He's going to be out there doing this. He's not going to just go away. He started his own YouTube show, The Skip Bayless Show, and I got to admit, I was kind of intrigued by it. I didn't expect I would be, but just him sitting there talking, which I'd never really seen from him before. He always had to have somebody to debate with. I kind of liked it. He kind of, was just able to. I mean, it was kind of dry, which is saying something coming from the master of these dry videos, but. Well, I'm not even the master of them, but. You get the point. But it was just kind of interesting to see him. He'd take viewers' questions, he'd actually go into an elaboration on it. He talked about his relationship with his mother, which to me was like, I gotta admit, I was riveted by it. Listening to him talk about Dallas, which is, his team. He grew up in Oklahoma, grew up in, I don't know when he was born, but, loved the Dallas Cowboys, still loves the Dallas Cowboys, and kind of like me with the Panthers, is there to, call them out at every given opportunity when he sees something that he feels is not right. Now, obviously, there's a difference between the Dallas Cowboy brand and the Carolina Panthers brand. The Panthers brand, our first season was the Dallas Cowboys' last Super Bowl championship season, their fifth Super Bowl championship. America's team, established, accomplished. After fighting for years to get there, losing to Green Bay, Lombardi's Green Bay Packers a lot, and you go on and on. And then they, made it back to the conference finals the year later against the second-year Panthers. No, they didn't make it to the conference finals. They made it to the semifinals. They went to Carolina, who had the second seed, and lost. And that started a streak that continues to this day, where they have not been even back to the conference finals since. We would lose to Green Bay in about 3-degree weather, but the Giants went there at 4 below weather some 12 years later, 11 years later, and won. So we didn't get the job done. No excuses. And to me, I'm like, he's not going to just go away. He's going to do something. And the fact that he's out there doing interviews for Barstool Sports, to me, if you're now look, I'm not going to tell Dave Portnoy how to do his job. He has done an amazing job. He's somebody that I have a ton of respect for. I like a lot of what he has to say too. Me and him are very much aligned on this whole, with the WNBA situation and Caitlin Clark, which has made up most of my videos, just because to me it's so fascinating. Do I agree with everything he says? No. Do I agree with everything I say? No. But I have a ton of respect for him. I would love to see just a 1-hour interview of just Dave Portnoy and Skip Bayless talking. That would be pretty awesome. They might have done that. I don't know. I just saw some of I saw his appearance on Pardon My Take, which is a pretty fun show. Really fun show, actually. And give them a lot of credit. They really, to me, they're the future. The future is creating your own content and getting away from corporate-backed sports media. And to me, Skip Bayless has finally joined, after falling behind really since 2015, has kind of jumped back. If he's going to be a part of them, even if he's going to be a regular contributor, that's just going to help his brand so much. His YouTube show has really picked up as far as viewers and subscribers, and I don't know if I'm subscribed to it or not. I watch it. I think I'm subscribed to it. I think I subscribed to it back when he was just considered to be on his way out. But anybody thought he was done. I mean, he's going to be doing this till he just absolutely can't do it anymore. Either because his body is completely done, his voice is done, or he's, I'm just going to say it, in a Joe Biden type situation. Even then, he'll probably be trying to find a camera to talk to, and heck, if he comes across my path, I'll give him a camera to talk to. I'd love to do that even if he is in the condition of somebody like Joe Biden, because there's got to be a part of his personality that would come out. So Skip's back. And that's another thing I meant to say with his time at FS1, his list of enemies that he'd made over the years by being the provocateur, coming out and saying the things that, you're probably not supposed to say. He made a lot of people mad. He pissed a lot of people off, and people really took that chance to dance on his grave, or his perceived grave in sports. He's taken a little bit, gathered himself, it seems like, and we're going to be seeing more of Skip. And you know what? I'm going to be watching. Am I going to be agreeing with a lot of it? Probably not. I didn't like a lot of what he had to say about Caitlin Clark initially. I felt like he was off base. I felt like he wasn't seeing the whole picture. Maybe I'm the one not seeing the whole picture. Who knows? I'm not going to sit here and say, yes, I'm right. I'm just sitting here giving you my perspective. 40-year-old who's never, really been a part of, who's just kind of sat back and observed everything, never had any role in anything in sports. Living in North Carolina and now South Carolina. This is just me giving my take. Sitting here in front of my phone talking for 24 minutes and 18 seconds as we speak. But I always try to keep these under 20 minutes, but sometimes it doesn't work. Skip's had quite the career, and I mean, you gotta admire it, and it looks like it's not over. And I gotta say, I'm excited about that. I'm interested. I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes, and I want to see how he does in this new era. See how this yet another reinvention of him works. And I mean, good Lord, he's kind of like the Undertaker of the sports commentator world. He's somebody who will not rest in peace, and he's going to be doing this. Looks like for A little bit longer at least, maybe a lot longer. I know he's in his 70s. Maybe he's got another 10 years left. Who knows? Maybe he's going to flame out and it'll finally be over. But I kind of want to see him go for a little longer, just find his place, find his niche, maybe kind of. I know he loves the debate thing, but do a little more of just the free form, just him in front of a camera sharing his thoughts. Because I found the Skip Bayless show on YouTube interesting. I do have to say, and like I said, I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be watching. This is interesting. I find it interesting, and to everybody who was writing his obituary for his sports journalist history, check the grave. They might have forgot to throw him in it. So he's not Jesus. He was not thrown in a tomb, dead, rose back to life, and pulled the stone back and went back to it. But I think they may have had a burial for him in his honor, thinking that he was gone, and it turns out he's not gone. So I know a lot of people are going to be really pissed off by that, and some of us are going to be like, this is interesting. And that's where I'm at. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'll be keeping an eye on it, and I got to be honest, I hope it works. I hope he's able to have another few years, because we need it, man. Sports nowadays is just not what it was. I think that's why I harp on Caitlin Clark so much. She's just kind of like this throwback of reminding me why I ever cared about sports in the first place. I've been so disillusioned by them for so long. And now here she is. And now I find myself being interested in things that I was not interested in for a long, long time. So, hey, go get him, Skipper. I don't know if he's going to be called Skipper or not, but go get him. Thank you guys for watching these videos. Thank you if you've made it this far. 27 minutes in right now. And take care. I'll talk to you guys later.